This is the 2018 Candidates Forum, live on the NCWLIFE channel. Tonight's forum is a collaboration of the NCWLIFE channel, KOHO Radio, and the Wenatchee World. Our TV broadcast comes courtesy of our title sponsor, Jeffers, Danielson, Son, and Aylward, and our supporting sponsors, Lake Chelan Mailboxes, Local Myth Pizza, Doghouse Motorsports, and Stormy Mountain Brewing. And now, from the stage of the Numerica Performing Arts Center, here is tonight's forum moderator, Cal Fitzsimmons.
From the Numerica Performing Arts Center, welcome to the 2018 Candidate Forum. I'm Cal Fitzsimmons, News and Sales Director for NCWLIFE TV. This forum is being presented to you by the Wenatchee World, KOHO Radio, and NCWLIFE. It is being broadcast live on NCWLIFE channels and website, and KOHO Radio and website. Before we begin, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our distinguished panel of journalists will be asking questions of the candidates from 7 local races. Our panelists are Dan Longauger and Steve Hare. Dan is from KOHO, Steve is from NCWLIFE TV. Our third panelist pulled out at the last minute, but we're prepared to pivot and do our best with that. They will take turns asking a second question themselves. All invited candidates agreed to appear at this forum, with the exception of the race for Chelan County Assessor. Incumbent Deanna Walter agreed to participate, but her opponent did not. Let me briefly explain how this forum will be conducted. Candidates from each race will be asked one question from each of the panelists, 2 now, from one of them. When all the questions have been answered, each candidate will be allowed a 1-minute closing statement. In the interest of time, please refrain from applause until after the candidates have completed their closing statements. Dan Kuntz will be our timekeeper, and as a candidate reaches 15 seconds remaining on their time, he will ring a bell once. Like that. When time has expired, Dan will ring the bell more than once. Like that. We will take a 2-minute break between each race to allow the next pair of candidates to get situated on the stage. Thank you for coming. Thank you for viewing. This is democracy at its finest, and I congratulate and thank all the candidates for stepping forward to serve our community. First up, we have Chelan County PUD Position 2, Randy Smith and Darren Klingensmith. Steve Hare will ask the first question. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And this is a question that I would like both of you to answer. Your staff at the PUD is estimating 12 additional substations are needed to meet demand from new homes and businesses in the future. How do you think the PUD should plan for that growth? Darren?
Is this on?
Yes.
Thank you, Steve. So the staff at the PUD is very versed in the load, past and future. There's a constant studies of where the growth is, where the growth's allowed by virtue of zoning, what's available. So these substations are thought of years ago, forecasting where growth can be. So I'm confident that as the county grows, continues to grow in these areas where it's possible. These substations have been thought about for a while. Getting the land acquisition is probably one of the biggest parts, and then getting the infrastructure there You know, a lot of folks aren't excited about having power lines. It takes a transmission line into the substation to make them work, and people aren't super excited about having a 115 kV transmission line in their backyard. So looking out there 5, 10, 15 years from now, trying to predict where the growth is going to be and getting the right-of-ways, the properties secured in advance before the growth gets there is the real trick. And they've been doing that as long as I've been around. I mean, it's been happening for quite some time. So I'm confident as we continue to grow that the staff and the future employees will continue to try to stay ahead of the growth in the county.
Thank you very much, Darren. Randy, same question.
You bet. Everybody in the room probably is aware that we've went through some high-profile attempts to site new substations here in Chelan County, and there is pushback from a visual standpoint. So in our discussions with staff, we've had conversations about the need and about how far out we should be looking, and we provided the guidance as a commission that we should be looking at least 10 years out in terms of our site acquisition, and we are not there yet. We have a new substation going in Chelan. We have a new one going in Leavenworth. We have a new one going in Old Station. Those sites are all purchased. Other than that, we have several sites that are not purchased, and we're asking our staff to look further into the future than they have been for the last few years to provide that ability to cultivate a relationship with the neighbors and an understanding with the neighbors before growth occurs, so we can site those substations in a way that the community embraces the substation. We've also talked about the creation of a substation that potentially adds value to the area with a little bit of landscaping, a little bit of amenities attached to it. So we're in those conversations. We recognize we have a changing county and that the desires and demands of our customers need to be listened to.
Thank you very much.
Dan, you have a question?
So the utility is moving forward with plans to relocate and consolidate its headquarters and facilities into Old Station in North Wenatchee. This would leave a big hole in the downtown at the current site of 5th Street and Wenatchee Avenue. What do you see as the utility's responsibility to the city of Wenatchee and its role that it should play in the redevelopment of that property? Randy?
You bet. That's been a very lively topic of discussion for several months at the utility. No decisions have been made at this point, even though we have signed the agreement to purchase property in Old Station from the port. We recognize that we have to be a participant in the entire county, and that includes the rural and the urban setting. We have engaged in downtown Wenatchee to talk about what the best path forward is, and I would say that no final decisions have been made. Conversations are ongoing as we speak virtually. So I come down to the policy approach of saying what's the best for the most for the longest here in Chelan County, and I keep coming back to that as my mantra for how we will finally make that decision, and it's after a lot of listening and a lot of conversations with people throughout all parts of the county.
Same question for Darren?
Yeah.
Thank you. So not sitting on the commission currently, I'm not super familiar with the details of what's been accomplished so far, but I hear quite a bit about it from different folks. I know there's a lot of concern from the Downtown Association what the impacts will or would be if the headquarters were moved off-site, Old Station or somewhere else. And so, like Randy said, what's the best for the most for the longest? I like the idea of that, and we're not going to please everybody. I think we all realize that. So the question would be, for the Downtown Association, what void will be created if the PUD headquarters is gone from 5th Street? And what's the benefit to the Sunny Slope region, Old Station region, that's kind of where growth is being forced to go for our town. In this area, maybe this is an opportunity, and these are conversations I haven't got to be involved in yet, but this is back to, can we create for the entire community something that's better? Yeah, there's a loss downtown, but is there potential for a greater gain in that region out there, not only for the participants, merchants, the community downtown, but also for traffic flow, and what's the potential for the 5th Street site if the PUD's gone? Is it a better neighbor than the PUD for the downtown association? I think it's definitely possible to find a great solution for everybody, the downtown, the old station growth, and the PUD also. The PUD's been there downtown a long time, and there's definitely a benefit to having everybody in one campus that can work together and be in proximity for sure. So I think there's a solution. We'll find it. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Hare, you had another question?
Yes, gentlemen, I'd like you to address the question of wholesale market rates. You're seeing a steady decline reported in that stream of revenue. What do you see as the future in that regard? Randy?
One thing that we can guarantee,
as it refers to, let's say, the rates.
You bet. The one thing we can always say about the future is we will predict it and we will be wrong. The rates have gone down steadily for the last 5 years in terms of wholesale power pricing. We are still turning a substantial profit here on our outside power sales. That being said, the more that we have wind and solar pushing power onto the marketplace and low natural gas prices, which drive electricity pricing, the greater the challenge will be for us. We have opportunities because, as everybody in this room knows, we have clean, renewable hydropower that we're generating, and we're working feverishly to create a market for that niche that recognizes carbon-free electricity. Everybody's heard the whole carbon conversation. We're trying to find a niche I think will be successful. I'm an eternal optimist, and while we have to be a realist when we set our budgets, I look down the road for the next 5 to 10 years, and I think we're going to be okay with our outside power sales. We're definitely going to have to pay attention and keep our ear to the ground ongoing about what's going on the entire West Coast and impact policy discussions here in our state and potentially in Washington, D.C. to not allow bad policies to have a negative impact on that pricing.
Darren?
Yes, sir. So the wholesale market gets talked about a lot, and I'm not sure a lot of folks in our community understand what does that mean to you and your wallet and your rates. So Chelan PUD has 3 generating sources: Rocky Reach Dam, Rock Island Dam, and Chelan Hydro Dam, and we can generate 1,800 to 2,000 megawatts an hour for our county, and we don't use near that much. So we sell it on the wholesale market to California, to Puget Sound Energy, to Portland General Electric, around the West Coast grid. So that income that comes from that wholesale sales pays for part of our cheap electric rates. We're being subsidized essentially by this wholesale rate. So that's why it's important, this conversation, if those prices continue to go down, at some point we cross that line where we can't pay our own freight with that wholesale energy, and our rates will have to go up. So that's the concern, and I would agree with Randy in that I'm not alarmed yet, but 15 years ago we didn't see this wind and solar condition that we're in now, and the subsidies that were put into that industry 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they have installed a lot of solar and wind in California. That's where a lot of our wholesale sales went. So the question is, if Elon Musk and this gigawatt battery storage plan continues to grow and foster and take foot in California, I think our wholesale Sales have the potential to even go down even further. But for us here at Chelan County, I want to think back in the 50s when Rocky Reach Dam was planned, was thought of, was built. That's why we're enjoying what we're enjoying today. And I'd like to think, what can we be doing today for 30, 40, 50 years for our kids so that they can enjoy what we're enjoying?
Okay, thank you. We'll now have 1 minute closing statements, and we'll begin with Randy.
You bet. I've been your commissioner for the last 12 years. I've developed a pretty good understanding of what's going on at our utility, and I'd like to think I've added value for the people of Chelan County. I appreciate the opportunity that you have given me to be that commissioner. And my question to you is, if you like the results we've had the last several years of paying down debt, low retail rates, fiber expansion, which we haven't talked about, I ask you to consider that and vote for me on November 6th. I also ask you to consider what that experience means in terms of my ability to be effective going forward. I'm currently the state vice president of the PUD Association, and have just been asked to go through the chairs of a national public power organization if I'm reelected. That took a lot of time to get to that point. So in this particular setting, I think experience really matters a lot in this election. And thank you for your support.
So I worked at the PUD for 22 years. I started in the line department as a lineman, went to the System Operations Center, and I've been gone for just over 5 years now. I have a lot of relationships I built, not only in Chelan County PUD, but in our community. I've grown up here. I also have relationships with utilities all around the Northwest through my inner workings with the Andrew York Lama Rodeo, being in system operations, going to training, having worked in Portland General Electric for a while. I have a really good understanding of the Northwest grid, how Chelan interacts with our neighbors, with the Western Interconnection, how our PUD works, all the components of our PUD, and relationships with the people who worked there for 20 plus years, who I can count on to keep me informed of the places that we need to put our efforts. I feel confident about that, and I feel confident with my energy, my excitement to do this job, and my background in construction, my architecture degree. If this headquarters campaign continues, I think my backgrounds and experiences would definitely be a benefit to the committee, or to the commission. And I would ask that all of you consider a fresh face on the commission for this next election. Thank you.
Thank you both. And we'll be taking a short break now and be back soon with the candidates for Chelan County Sheriff at the 2018 Candidate Forum.
Tonight's television broadcast is brought to you by JDSA Law. Listen to their podcast, JDSA's Law Talk, as their attorneys clearly explain complicated legal issues and how the law applies to your everyday personal and professional life.
At Local Myth Pizza, we believe in real food, freshly prepared with only premium ingredients. Our cheeses are imported from Italy. Our sauces, dressings, and even our sausages are made in-house fresh daily. Featuring Northwest craft beers and 30 Chelan Valley wines and ciders. Family fun and amazing food. Eat local, drink local, and be local at Local Myth Pizza.
Come see why Sunset Magazine says you can't beat Local Myth Pizza.
Stormy Mountain Brewing and local public house, featuring great family dining in downtown Chelan. We've got burgers, pub fare, and the best barbecue around. Try one of our award-winning sauces made fresh here in-house. So grab the whole gang and come on down. Stormy Mountain Brewing. Beer, barbecue, friends, and beer.
Lake Chelan Mailboxes is a small place with a lot to offer. Job one is shipping and receiving from A to Z. They pack it, they label it, they ship it. But did you know we also offer notary service, online computer access, legal forms, copies, greeting cards, and of course, mailboxes. Chelan Mailboxes, everything you need in one small package.
Welcome back to the 2018 Candidate Forum. Our next race is for Chelan County Sheriff, and we have incumbent Brian Burnett and Jennifer Tyler. This time we'll begin our questioning with Dan.
This is a question for both of you. We'll start with Jennifer. The Sheriff's Office takes up the second largest chunk of the county's budget, second to Public Works. Search and rescues continue to rise in the county, with more and more people from the west side coming over and finding themselves in sticky situations. How would you work to balance the budget with that expense and others continuing to rise?
Well, I believe our last fiscal year budget was about $11 million. Patrol takes up the vast majority of that budget. We do know that as people come over, they're not really educated as to how sometimes difficult the terrains are here. You know, I've been on patrol with Chelan County for 12 years, and it's often common that people come over and they underestimate the dangers of the Tumwater Canyon. I unfortunately worked a death one time of a guy intoxicated, gets in a rubber raft and sends his dad and him and their family down the Tumwater Canyon. Now, if you've ever been up the Tumwater Canyon, I wouldn't go down that thing in the Titanic. And so people who come over vastly underestimate the dangers that's here. You know, I think educating the public and finding ways for law enforcement to be better visible and better communicate with people so that they're better prepared when they come. You know, maybe things more so at the trailheads that alert people to what's more needed when they go in. I know I've hiked up to the Kolchak Lake. There's not a lot of information there. My daughter and I underestimated the trip back out. It was dark. We almost ended up ourselves as a search and rescue. Fortunately, I've got inside contacts to Mike McLeod, who does an amazing job, who helped us get out of that. So I think just educating people before they come will lower costs because we'll have less problematic situations. And then maybe look at partnering with our reserves. I know we lost some of the reserve programs that we had. Maybe bring some of the volunteer resources back, and that might help better benefit and lower costs as well.
Brian, same question to you. How would you balance the budget with some of these costs continuing to rise?
Well, thanks, Dan. I think balancing is probably not the proper word, but right. So the 2018 budget for the Sheriff's Office is just a little over $10.6 million, and 82% of that is roughly for our salaries and benefits. I think the biggest portion of what we look at our largest cost is when we have to insert our staff in, especially on an overnight situation, and most of those people are being paid at a time and a half rate. And so those numbers can generate thousands of dollars very quickly. It adds to our overtime budget, and again, back to where we are on our salaries and benefits. We've looked at a lot of different things in the past. Our helicopter budget is one, but a lot of times some of the missions that we're doing are going to take winch-capable machinery to do that, and we don't have that. So we reach out to both Snohomish County, King County, and a lot of our military services to make those life-saving rescues or body recovery. Sometimes we have a death up there in the high country. And we've been looking at some drone programs that we could do to minimize staffing and doing some insertion. I have a person from the University of Washington in their aerodynamics program or aeronautics program that's going to be looking at some different platforms to see are there some things we can do with that. And at one point in time we were working with a group called Cascadian Consortium to look, is there a way that we can consolidate our resources between King County, Snow County, Kittitas County, Yakima County, ourselves, and Spokane County to put all of our resources together to use some of our aircraft and put those winchable machineries at the use for everybody. So I think it's not an easy thing to do, but it's just those things we'll continue to look outside the box and look for other people for resources to see, can we look for something that we can do that'll help us get and minimize our man hours.
Thank you. Steve, you had a question, and we'll start with Brian this time.
For both candidates, question, what is the sheriff's role or responsibility in providing safe schools?
Great question, Steve, because this is something I'm very passionate about as far as our school resource programs. There's a lot of different things we can do. Obviously, the school districts are going to be independent of one another throughout the state, and the state is going to give some guidance on their safety and their liability programs. But for us, it is can we provide a resource and work in partnership with our communities, not just the school districts, but with our communities to say what can we do to build relationships and reduce the likelihood of a casualty or an event that somebody's going to come in and try to do harm, and then also enable and enhance our safe learning environment for those. And then we're already doing that. We've been doing that for several years as we provide 3 full-time school resource officers right now to Cascade, Cashmere, Lake Chelan School District, and Lake Chelan and Manson this year are partnering and doing a halftime. But we've also pulled in some resources with some of our cities that are partnering with us to do that. Say, is it very expensive for just the sheriff's office to do that? Is it very expensive for just the cities or the school districts alone to do that? So together, we came together and said, let's do this together and make it happen at a reduced rate because we think it's the right thing to do to keep our schools safe.
Thank you for the question, Steve. As a proud mother of a Cashmere Bulldog and as a sheriff's deputy, our schools are very dear to my heart. I know the sheriff homeschools his kids. I've been very animately involved in the Cashmere School District. We have 3 school resource officers. Cashmere alone has 3 schools. Cascade, which if anybody's been to Leavenworth, they're still busing kids from Peshastin up to Cascade or up to Leavenworth. Same way with Sunny Slope, Eniat, the Terminal Street School, Chelan, Manson. 3 school resource officers is wonderful. It's more than what we've ever had, but is it enough? You know, I believe that while we're out on patrol, and I often do when I patrol days or I patrol nights, I make sure that I attend as many games that I can in uniform. I make sure that I know who our school leaders are. I make sure that they recognize me and I recognize them by name. I think that when we patrol from Wenatchee to Chelan and you count how many deputies make that route every day and how many actually stop off in Eniat to check in on their school, to check in with them, or to make a round through the parking lots. Just because cities can afford us there doesn't mean the rest of them don't get us there. We have to make more of an effort to be seen, to be heard. Like I said, Sunny Slope, Eniat, getting from Chelan to Manson, if there is an incident and you are in the Chelan School District, but you have an incident in Manson, we need to make sure that we are communicating with patrol, that patrol knows where we are. I know that currently that's not happening. I don't know which school my school resource officer is in at any given time.
Thank you, Jennifer. Dan, you had another question?
So we'll start with Jennifer on this one. There's a real spotlight in the country right now on how agencies deal with issues of gender discrimination at work, including law enforcement. How would your leadership style make sure all employees of the Chelan County Sheriff's Office, as well as county citizens, feel comfortable voicing concerns?
Within our ranks or with us dealing with the public?
Both.
Okay, Dan, as you know, if anyone knows that my story, this is a subject I could probably speak on every day. I was the first female deputy in the history of 2 counties in Oklahoma. Being the underdog or the not so commonplace was no shock or surprise to me. We need more, all minorities within the ranks of patrol. Not just women, but all minorities. I think sometimes people are afraid to work with a woman, especially one that has testified against a cop. We have to work through those differences. I've been here 12 years. I chose to be here. I chose to come here, and I'm going to choose to stay. I think as far as us dealing with the community and gaining that trust from women, nationwide, there's just kind of been this, one war on cops. We kind of had that went down, and it became us against them, and then it became this, war on women. or war on men from women. And so it's better that in law enforcement we're the front lines. We're the first ones to make contact with the victim, whether you're a man or a woman. And it's just letting them know that you're there to protect them, to keep them safe, to listen to them. You know, the civil liability, when you get into violating civil rights, the civil rights law's been around since the 60s. It shouldn't be something that someone's not fully aware of what your basic human rights are in a workplace. And if you can't follow that law, how can you enforce other laws?
Brian, same question. Your leadership in dealing with issues of gender discrimination in law enforcement and in the community.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. You know, it can be a tricky question, it can be not, but really it's following best practice and policies for Washington State as we look to the Washington Associations of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs to give us those best practice policies, and then we adhere to those. And one of the things that the Sheriff's Office has done in 2011 when I came in and took over administration was to do a LEMAP study with Loan and Management Executive Team from the WASPIC Corporation to come in and identify risks and liabilities. And so as we do that, you try to identify things that maybe you already know about, two, things that you don't know about, so you can look back and then say, let's change the ones that we didn't know about, and let's shore up the ones that we know that we are doing good and continue to do those best practice. And the other thing that we're working on is we're just getting ready as we negotiate with our Sheriff's Deputies Association and finalizing the last 3 or 4 policies is going to an online program, Lexapol, as a brand new policy and procedure, and those things are specifically made to adhere to our current laws and all of our constitutional rights, but they'll continually do updates within our policy as we train and maintain our staff. But going back, it's really about recruitment and training and making sure that we're hiring the people that have the right core values in the first place, and that we're not having to teach them how to treat somebody, but making sure that they're following our policy and procedure is important, making sure they're following the right laws. But really it's about hiring and retaining the person that knows how to already treat somebody the right way, and we're teaching them how to be a law enforcement professional. And again, we're working with human resources from the county. We're working from our county legal teams to make sure the Washington State risk pool that we're bringing in, training for our supervisors, so again, that they're leading and guiding and directing in the proper manner.
Thank you, Brian. We'll go to the 1-minute closing statement. It's now starting with Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here today as what's been dubbed the People's Candidate. I'm ready to be the People's Sheriff. I'm a career law enforcement veteran with 23 years of experience, 12 years of that right here in Chelan County. I am committed to providing fair service to the citizens of Chelan County and safeguarding our schools and our neighborhoods. I am committed to combating the influx of illegal narcotics that come into our county by establishing a highway interdiction team. I am committed to building substations in both our north and our west districts that provide better service to our contract cities. I am committed to organizing more tailored patrols that fit the needs of those cities and communities. We secured 4.64% of a vote in 4 days. Let's see what we can do together in 4 years. I ask for your vote on November 6th.
Thank you, Jennifer. Brian?
Thank you. Born and raised in Chelan County. That's really not what's important, but Chelan County is important along with the many other communities here. I take it a lot different way. As I started with the county in 1998, worked in the jail, and then quickly went into the field, working in a lot of supervisory positions, field training officer, school resource officer, tactical team for almost 8 years. I've seen a lot of different things, worked with a lot of different people, but it's about building a team and having people work beside you that trust you and that want to follow and go with you in the future. And I think that my proven leadership, working with our contract cities and repairing relationships, what I call across the street with our commissioner board, with our county administrators, with our local cities, department heads, because it is much bigger than just the sheriff's office. It is a much bigger team within the county and all the different departments, within our other local agencies and our cities and our schools. And it says that we have to work together to find solutions. And I believe that's what I bring to the table. And don't take my word for it. Don't take my opponent's word for it. Go out and talk to the people that have worked closely with me, that really know the real me and know the details to the situation. And again, I appreciate all your support, and I look forward to being your sheriff for many more years. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Brian and Jennifer. We're going to take a break again now and be back with the Douglas County Sheriff candidates at the 2018 Candidate Forum.
Tonight's television broadcast is brought to you by JDSA Law. Since 1946, they've been dedicated to providing the highest quality legal support to individuals, businesses, and organizations.
At Local Myth Pizza, we believe in real food, freshly prepared with only premium ingredients. Our cheeses are imported from Italy. Our sauces, dressings, and even our sausages are made in-house fresh daily. Featuring Northwest craft beers and 30 Chelan Valley wines and ciders. Family fun and amazing food. Eat local, drink local, and be local at Local Myth Pizza.
Come see why Sunset Magazine says you can't beat Local Myth Pizza.
Stormy Mountain Brewing and Local Public House, featuring great family dining in downtown Chelan. We've got burgers, pub fare, and the best barbecue around. Try one of our award-winning sauces made fresh here in-house. So grab the whole gang and come on down. Stormy Mountain Brewing. Beer, barbecue, friends, and beer.
Lake Chelan Mailboxes is a small place with a lot to offer. Job one is shipping and receiving from A to Z. They pack it, they label it, they ship it. But did you know we also offer notary service, online computer access, legal forms, copies, greeting cards, and of course, mailboxes. Chelan Mailboxes, everything you need in one small package.
Welcome back to the 2018 Candidate Forum. Up next, we have the candidates for Douglas County Sheriff, Kevin Morris and Leon Leidy. Beginning our questions will be Steve Hare.
Gentlemen, welcome. Question I have has to do with relationships, let's say, with your surrounding counties. My question is, why are you not involved with Rivercom as a dispatch agency or the Columbia River Drug Task Force? Are you failing the citizens of Douglas County by not being a partner in these two organizations? Let's start with Kevin.
Thanks, Steve. So we are a member of Rivercom. We have been from the inception. One of our county commissioners sits on the board. I sit as the sheriff as one of the members.
You have a separate dispatch log that I receive every morning. I get into work and I see the Rivercom log comes to me at 6 o'clock every morning. I wait until about 8 o'clock to get the Douglas County rundown of the previous day's activities. So.
Right. Our office sends out the media every day, but we are members of Rivercom, have been from the inception. As far as the Columbia River Drug Task Force in Douglas County, we work with multiple drug task force. We have a great relationship with all of them. Columbia River Drug Task Force, which is the parent agency, is Chelan County Sheriff's Office. We also have the North Central Washington, which the parent agency is Okanagan County. We have a great relationship with them. A couple years ago, Sheriff Burnett and then Wenatchee Police Chief Tom Robbins came and talked to my predecessor, Sheriff Harvey Jesdal, and I was the undersheriff at the time, and talked to us about getting back into the Columbia River Drug Task Force. We had a great relationship, conversation through that, and since then we've been working diligently to get a palatable transition back into it. It's expensive. It's over $40,000 just for the equalization fee to get back into it, and we have to establish what is best for our community. We just got some more bodies for the boots on the ground, and we cannot afford to take a body from our day-to-day patrols and reassign them as a Columbia River Drug Task Force. That just is not what's best for our citizens. However, we do, even though we don't have a detective assigned to them, we meet with them regularly. Our SRT team serves their warrants in Douglas County, and we communicate with them regularly. And I think we have a great relationship, and I see value in it. And I actually put a position in our budget this year to try to assign somebody there, but not to take anybody off the street. Thank you.
I stand corrected on Rivercom. Thank you very much. Leanne, your position on the Columbia River Drug Task Force?
Right. Since I first announced in February, that was my #1 platform, was to get somebody back on the Columbia River Drug Task Force. Since 2005, Douglas County has not had anybody on that task force. And as a result, we have an opioid epidemic in this community, in this country, and not having a representative from the Douglas County Sheriff's Department on that task force means that Bridgeport, Mansfield, Waterville, Rock Island, they don't have a deputy that has a vested interest in their communities as far as drug crimes go. So getting somebody on that task force, then Bridgeport, Waterville, Mansfield, Rock Island, and the East Wenatchee community, or Rondo, they're all going to have somebody who's going to be out there gaining information, informants, starting to build cases that are important to the community members to attack this problem. It is expensive. There are grants that are available from the state through the federal government. They're called burn grants. They don't cover all of it, but they cover some of it, and that would help. Yeah, it's going to be difficult to get somebody, budgeting for it, but it has to be done, and I think it can be done. It's not something that we should be delaying anymore. It's got to be something that we consider right now, and I made a mistake of saying I will up at a meeting in Bridgeport. And I can't say I will get somebody on that team, but I'm going to work tirelessly to get somebody on that team. That's my #1 goal.
Thank you. Dan, your turn.
Leon, I'll go first on this one. Question for both of you. How would you rate the Douglas County Sheriff's Office on transparency to its citizens? Does the office do enough public outreach? If not, what would you change?
I can't, not being a member of the Douglas County Sheriff's Department, I can't speak internally how they handle things. I come from a very large agency that didn't say a whole lot when things happened. It took back in the early 2000s for the Washington State Patrol to finally change the way that they dealt with the media, they dealt with people. They shared the information. They didn't try and, I don't want to use the word hide, but they didn't share it. And as a trooper and a sergeant and a member of that agency, you were frustrated at times that things weren't shared to straighten out stories. So that is one of the big things that I will bring to the agency, is transparency. From my administration all the way down to the deputies, there will be transparency. We will share, whether it's Facebook. I know that the retired Sheriff Harvey Jesdal did that, and it's a great process to inform people what's going on in the community. And I enjoy that kind of media and getting the information out there. I will share one little comment that I saw on my computer one day. It's a fire up in Rondo or BB Bridge area. One of the comments that was made from the fire side was, we're having a briefing at such and such a time. It'd be nice to have the Douglas County Sheriff's Office there. Well, that tells me that maybe the Douglas County Sheriff's Office wasn't there the night before or earlier in the morning, and they needed somebody to be there so that they could share information and work together.
Kevin, same question. Rating the transparency of the sheriff's office, public outreach, would you change anything?
I'm proud of our agency and how we've done that. I worked for Sheriff Jesdal for quite a while, and he was a champion of that. I followed suit, and I established, after he retired, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office Facebook page, also a Twitter page, and I've never Twittered before. We have over 1,821 square miles in Douglas County, 30 commissioned officers from the sheriff to our newest hired. And there's no way we can manage that without the help and support of our people. We depend on their eyes, their ears, and their voice to do our job effectively. And I think we should reciprocate. We need to make sure that our community knows what we're doing, why we're doing it, when we're doing it, how we're doing it. As long as, of course, we're not telling the wrong people what we're doing, when we're doing it, why we're doing it. So I'm passionate about it. Transparency is extremely important. We have to build trust, faith, and respect. We build that with our people of our community that we serve every day, and they're going to give it back, and we're going to give it back to us. And that's all there is to it. You simply have to communicate, be open and transparent. I believe the Douglas County Sheriff's Office does that. We got great working relationships with every one of our fellow law enforcement agencies, first responders, firefighters, cities, schools. I've been very, very positive and happy about what I'm hearing on the campaign trail and from our deputies. They share the same passion I have, and you see it every day out on the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, you had another question?
I do, for both candidates, same question. What do you see, besides finances, what do you see as the single biggest challenge for law enforcement in Douglas County right now? Leon?
I've commented several times on the opioid epidemic, getting somebody on the Columbia River Drug Task Force. Another thing that is dear to my heart is school safety. We have to protect our students and our staffs at all of our schools. For instance, the things that don't cost you any money. Sitting in a parking lot, watching the school during the day. I went to Sterling Intermediate and stood in the lunchroom for about 20 minutes today. I'll go sit in the parking lots. I won't sit in the same parking lot so nobody can see a pattern developing. I'll go to all the different schools and sit for 20 minutes and I'll do paperwork. I'll walk into the schools because it's important to me. Those don't cost you any money. They just take a little bit of time during your day. Nothing, that's easy. So it is a big concern. My son's here and and he's in school. So it's important to me that I'm out there protecting him and knowing that he's going to get home safely every day. That's my goal. Understand that the schools, we can't go in and dictate how we're going to enforce things and protect the schools. We can work with the schools. It's their decision to make. But we can work with them and give them best practices, give them the best training that we can give them. And there are members of the Douglas County Sheriff's Department that are that qualified. Share that information with them so that if there's something happens, hope to the good Lord that nothing does and we can all go home safely. The kids can go home safely every day. Thanks.
Thank you, Leon.
Same question. Kevin?
So the number one really is the mental health. We are dealing with this every day, and it bleeds into the opioid epidemic. Sometimes it's the cause of the mental health. Sometimes the mental health is the cause of getting into opioids. So we are constantly working with our partners, mental health group. We meet with them weekly, go over folks in our community that we've dealt with that haven't reached that criminal element yet we see problems, we see things. Early intervention is extremely important. So we talk to them, we work with them to come up with great solutions to try to prevent them from making criminal decisions and become part of our criminal element. Taking mental health people to jail is not the solution. It simply stops it for the night. It really doesn't stop it for the rest of the time. So that is, to answer your question directly, that is probably the biggest thing we're dealing with. And as we get smarter and get better trained, we're learning that they all, like I said, they all bleed together. And we're working hard with our partners to make sure that we are doing the right things, to make sure that we are addressing the issues that we are seeing every day, from opioids to mental health to school safety. All of these things work together. But again, mental health I see is a major, our biggest component right now that we need to be tackling.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll now have our 1-minute closing statements, and we'll start with Kevin this time.
Well, thank you. I've been with Douglas County for over 18 years. I have over 23 years in law enforcement experience, and I am extremely blessed with the support I've received. I am endorsed by every sheriff that touches our borders, every mayor we provide law enforcement to, the full-time firefighters in Douglas County, Rivercom Dispatch, the Douglas County Sheriff's Deputy Guild. There's a ton of support I've had. I believe I've earned that respect and trust from them. I was their peer in Douglas County for over 18 years, their supervisor, their undersheriff, and now their sheriff, and they still want me to be their sheriff. I believe it's because they like the direction we're going. I'm proud of our agency. I like the direction we're going, and I want to continue that. I want to keep moving, working with the community, solving problems with our community, for our community, and that's what I believe in. Thank you.
Thank you. Leon?
I've spent 32 years in law enforcement, 25 with the Washington State Patrol. I was a sergeant here in Wenatchee for 12 years, the last 12 years of my career. I currently work for the city of East Wenatchee and have for about 6 years now as a police officer. I came from a large agency. I now work for a much smaller agency, so I'm able to see how a large agency worked and a small agency is working. Tradition is great. I grew up with a campaign hat, a bow tie, and shiny black Corfam shoes that just shine with pledge. It took a lot of years. I liked the campaign hat, but we didn't have to wear the bow tie anymore, and we got to wear boots when we worked in the snow and the rain. So tradition is great. I bring a fresh, new perspective to Douglas County. Different insight to how I'd like to see things run, and I think as I walk around and talk to people, they tell me, especially up in Bridgeport, I went up there several months ago, and they feel like they're left out. And I have to wonder, the undersheriff at the time lived in Bridgeport, so I told them I would be at every meeting I could be to. Same in Waterville, same in Rock Island. So again, tradition is good, but change is good too. So let my experience work for you, and just remember as you go out there and vote that my opponent was not, he was appointed as the sheriff, he was not elected by the people.
Thank you to both candidates for Douglas County Sheriff. We'll be taking a break now and be back with the Douglas County Commission Position 3 candidates at the 2018 Candidate Forum.
Tonight's television broadcast is brought to you by JDSA Law. Listen to their podcast, JDSA's Law Talk, as their attorneys clearly explain complicated legal issues and how the law applies to your everyday personal and professional life.
Lake Chelan Mailboxes is a small place with a lot to offer. Job one is shipping and receiving from A to Z. They pack it, they label it, they ship it. But did you know we also offer notary service, online computer access, legal forms, copies, greeting cards, and of course, mailboxes. Chelan Mailboxes, everything you need in one small package.
At Local Myth Pizza, we believe in real food, freshly prepared with only premium ingredients. Our cheeses are imported from Italy. Our sauces, dressings, and even our sausages are made in-house fresh daily. Featuring Northwest craft beers and 30 Chelan Valley wines and ciders. Family fun and amazing food. Eat local, drink local, and be local at Local Myth Pizza.
Come see why Sunset Magazine says you can't beat Local Myth Pizza.
Stormy Mountain Brewing and local public house, featuring great family dining in downtown Chelan. We've got burgers, pub fare, and the best barbecue around. Try one of our award-winning sauces made fresh here in-house. So grab the whole gang and come on down. Stormy Mountain Brewing. Beer, barbecue, friends, and beer.
Welcome back to the 2018 Candidate Forum. Next up, we have candidates for Douglas County Commission, Position 3, Mark Straub and Norman Tupling. We'll start our questioning this time with Dan.
Question for both of you. We'll start with Norman, and it relates to housing. There is a lot of developable land in Douglas County, certainly compared to Chelan County. Housing construction is going strong, but there's still a big need for more housing, both for affordable as well as for families that are starting their lives here in Douglas County. What do you see as the role for smart planning for that growth in the county?
So one of the things that I go back to is my time at Douglas County PUD. And as a journeyman lineman, you learn how to look ahead, every step ahead, a step ahead all the time. And so one of the things I'd like to bring to our county if elected is that thought of looking ahead, planning ahead. What do we got to come? Are we prepared for what's coming? And the housing thing is a tough deal because, as you know, there is a lot of land, but there's a lot of agriculture. So there's a fine line there of balancing the agriculture and the housing. And it all costs money. So it comes down to money in the end. But if elected, I will do everything I can, along with the other commissioners, to find a resolution, come up with what's best for our county as a whole, not just East Wenatchee, but the whole county. Thank you.
And Mark, same question. What can or should the county do when it comes to planning for the necessary housing?
Thank you. You know, having affordable housing is just absolutely critical to economic growth, to allowing for families, working families, to be able to afford to live here, to be able to work here. And we have an environment that people want to live here. And because of that, demand prices go up. And so we need to make sure that we're planning, we're looking forward, that we're making certain that we're making decisions that are making our permitting processes efficient. And so that we're doing everything that we can do to keep those housing costs down and make it more affordable. There's a number of issues that are outside the county's control, driven down by the state, but there are a number of issues that we at the county level have control over, and then also working with our state legislators to address those issues, those mandates that get handed down from the state that affect housing costs. We need to be mindful of that. And we do need to strike a balance between ag and growth. The way that you most effectively manage growth is to stay a step ahead and make certain that we're balancing everybody's needs, and that's critical. But having access to affordable housing right now is a real issue, and those costs are not going down, they're going up. And so we need to do meaningful steps, take meaningful steps to address that. And there's a lot of latitude within the county government to make that happen, and certainly working with our partners to make that happen is important. So thank you.
Steve, you had a question?
I do. Both candidates can answer the same question. What are your thoughts on the looming financial crisis at Pangborn Airport? Would you support a levy increase to help meet the shortfall? And let's start with you, Mark.
Thank you, Steve. You know, I would not support a levy or a tax increase, quite frankly. The taxpayers are burdened as it is, and I know it's a resource for the region. It certainly is, but I don't think necessarily increasing spending or the burden on the taxpayers is the solution. I think that there is a solution, but it needs to require all the parties sitting down, taking a look at what the expenses are, what Chelan County wants, what Douglas County wants,
and who has control over those decisions. My understanding is that Douglas County has a 30% share of any overages, and I think it's important that we have a voice at that table. And no, I do not believe that going to the taxpayers to shore up that is in the best interest of our citizens. I do think that there is a solution. I do think that it's a resource, and I do think that it's important to the region economically, but I think that there is a solution without going back to the taxpayers.
Norm, same question.
Yeah, so I would agree with Mark in the fact that we pay enough tax as it is. I don't think that's the answer to it. But what I can say that I will do is, again, get together with all the partners involved, PUD, cities, get involved, come to the table, we all sit down, we get together, and we think about what's best for the people of our area. Chelan, Douglas County, the people surrounding, all the people that use that, what's best, and we can come to a solution together.
Thank you.
Dan, you had another question?
So we'll start with Norm on this one. S&P just upgraded Douglas County's credit rating to AA, the third highest designation. The county will likely use that rating to finance a portion of the new law and justice facility. How else would you leverage the lower interest rate and reduced fees for projects in the county?
Well, with having that leverage, you can, obviously you're going to borrow at better rates. So that saves the people in the long run. It saves the taxpayer. So any way that we can come to the table, sit down and look at what we can do to save the rates of the taxpayer in Douglas County, we need to do that. And so if elected, that is a priority of mine, because I want to make sure that the money we have is being spent in the right spots all the time, so that our resources aren't just being wasted in places they shouldn't be, so that the taxpayers are seeing good use of what they're putting in. So I will work together with the other commissioners to make sure that's being done.
Mark, same question. What does the S&P upgrade mean for Douglas County?
Thank you, Dan. Well, immediately the upgrade to AA will translate into lower debt service costs on the Law and Justice building, which is great. By the way, the Law and Justice building, I fully support. We looking into the future, 30 years, 10, 20, 30 years into the future, public safety is huge. We need to have safe communities if we want to have vibrant communities, a vibrant county. And so I fully support the Law and Justice building. But in looking at that, I want to make sure that those costs are as minimal on the taxpayers as possible. And so this has come by way of good management at Douglas County in terms of the fiscal responsibility. And I'm a fiscal conservative, so I'm proud of the way that Douglas County manages its resources, its the funds. And so if elected, I would continue to work in that regard for the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Now it's time for our 1-minute closing statements, and we'll start with Norman.
So first of all, I want to thank the Lord for giving me this opportunity to be here, to serve you. Second of all, my family and all those that have stood next to me along this journey, thank you. And to those that are going to the ballot and you're unsure of who to vote for, if you want something fresh, something different, someone that knows the district that he's running for, has a vast knowledge of the county, I ask you to consider me and to vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, first, thanks for being here this evening. You know, when we elect those that represent us, it's one of the most fundamental, important rights that we have. And so I guess above all else, I would just ask that each of you exercise that right on November 6th. If elected, I commit to serving every Douglas County citizen with integrity, with an open door policy. I promise to listen, and I promise to approach all of my decisions and all of the issues with common sense. I'm very proud to be endorsed by the Washington Farm Bureau, the Douglas County Deputy Sheriff's Guild, and other respected organizations. And I'm extremely grateful to all of the voters in the 3rd District who lent their support to me in the recent primary. And I would just be humbled and grateful to have your support on November 6th. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We'll be taking a break again, and we'll be back with our candidates for Chelan County Commission at the 2018 Candidate Forum.
Tonight's television broadcast is brought to you by JDSA Law. Since 1946, they've been dedicated to providing the highest quality legal support to individuals, businesses, and organizations.
Stormy Mountain Brewing and local public house, featuring great family dining in downtown Chelan. We've got burgers, pub fare, and the best barbecue around. Try one of our award-winning sauces made fresh here in-house. So grab the whole gang and come on down. Stormy Mountain Brewing. Beer, barbecue, friends, and beer.
Lake Chelan Mailboxes is a small place with a lot to offer. Job one is shipping and receiving from A to Z. They pack it, they label it, they ship it. But did you know we also offer notary service, online computer access, legal forms, copies, greeting cards, and of course, mailboxes. Chelan Mailboxes, everything you need in one small package.
At Local Myth Pizza, we believe in real food, freshly prepared with only premium ingredients. Our cheeses are imported from Italy. Our sauces, dressings, and even our sausages are made in-house fresh daily. Featuring Northwest craft beers and 30 Chelan Valley wines and ciders. Family fun and amazing food. Eat local, drink local, and be local at Local Myth Pizza.
Come see why Sunset Magazine says you can't beat Local Myth Pizza.
Welcome back to the 2018 Candidate Forum. Next up, we have the candidates for Chelan County Commission, Position 2, Sean Smith and Bob Boogert. Our questioning will start with Steve Hare.
Gentlemen, same question for both. As Chelan County continues to market itself as an outdoor recreation destination, is it a conflict for us to be reintroducing grizzly bears and wolves into this area? Go ahead, Sean, you take it first.
Well, that's kind of a loaded question, and you typically want to bring a gun to a loaded question, but I think that it's probably not wise to reintroduce these animals into our area. If they wanted to be here, I believe they would be in the area already. It obviously isn't favorable to them to be here right now, otherwise they would be. We've done nothing to interfere or to impede or to stop them from coming. So I would say, why do we want to risk life, limb, and property and livestock just to bring an animal here that isn't here for its own reasons? We did nothing to stop it from being here, so why encourage to bring it back? Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. This is an issue that I have some experience related to this since I am a fish and wildlife biologist. It's really important to really consider the ecological and the social consequences of reintroduction. A great example that we've had here recently is I was involved in a major effort to reintroduce coho salmon to streams in north central Washington. It's a native species that was extirpated, that went extinct. We brought it back and very successfully, and now it's to the point where it's almost reestablished itself naturally, and it is going to provide great economic benefit and ecological benefit to our systems here. Another example then would be something like the mountain goats that were introduced to the Olympic National Park. Those were not native there, and it caused considerable economic, social, and environmental damage. And so now we're going through the consequences of having to remove them there. But grizzly bear, that is totally a different situation there. Grizzly bear requires a very large home range, and it is very difficult to manage, as I'm sure you can tell. And so in places where there's very large open areas in Alaska, British Columbia, Alberta, and the Yellowstone complex, it can be done. But when we're next to a metropolitan area of 5 million people plus coming in to this area here, that we cannot manage for that. There will be negative consequences that will occur. And we just had some discussions with the sheriff's office here about the costs of managing for that. That would be of any kind of catastrophes. This would be a big one. So I don't think it'd be a very wise thing to do. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. You had a question?
Question for both of you. We'll start with Bob on this one. More homeowners in the county are locating inside the wildland-urban interface, or WUI, which puts them closer to hazards like fires and landslides. How do you think the county should handle the permitting of such construction, as well as the management of hazards near current or new neighborhoods in the WUI?
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you brought that up, Dan, because this is an important issue that Chelan County will be addressing. I have some experience working on this related to some floodplains as well, and having building occurring in there and the consequences to that. Same thing occurs with the fact that we've got some higher fire-prone areas, and people are moving into areas where there is a very difficult wildland-urban interface. I think the county needs to step up its approach. I was a member of the Community Planning Assistance for Wildfire program that Chelan County and the city of Wenatchee did, because I was involved in the development of the Wenatchee foothills, which makes a very good wildland-urban interface for the city of Wenatchee. The group that we hired through the Community Planning for Wildfire Assistance program came up that had some expertise in related to the development of WUI codes, wildland urban interface codes, came up with some recommendations to the county on how to implement them. These are nationally known experts that went through a community planning process here, and they made those recommendations, and I believe the county should accept them. Thanks.
And Sean, same question. How should the county handle the WUI and the homeowners there?
Well, when we consider where we're going to live, there's a lot of people that want to live within the city limits and a lot of people that want to live in the country. And we've chosen personally to live in the country because that's where we want to raise our children. I think the county has done an excellent job already with the codes that they're writing and the codes that they're enforcing, and we need to let them continue to do their job. We have professionals there that know what they're doing and have established rules that we're all building by now, whether it be cement siding or whether it be an asphalt roof. And I think that as we're looking at the people that are coming here that may not know how it is that we live out here in the West, it's the code of the West still where we need to provide for ourselves. We need to take some personal responsibility for the properties that we're going to have and that we're going to own. And what we've done personally at our house, we live in a box canyon out in Brender Canyon in Kashmir, and we have chosen to live out there, but we have also protected our property by a defendable space. If something were to break out in the area, I would hope that we have a chance to defend our home because of the way that we have built our landscaping and we've done our clearing of the forest. Forest health is another big issue with that, though, because if we're going to continue to have these mega fires because of poor forest management, all of us are in peril. All of us are risking everything every time a fire lights up, whether it's in the foothills, whether it's in the forest and stretches to downtown and burns warehouses down. So I think it's imperative that we continue to work together with the county and the rules that they're already establishing in order to build safe places for us, whether we want to be inside the city limits with fire hydrants or outside the city limits with our own defendable space. So Code of the West, protect yourself. Take a little personal responsibility for where you want to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, you had another question?
I do. It's a budget question, and certainly the Chelan County is facing some real challenges now in terms of meeting its responsibilities, especially losing the old station revenue. Holden Mine remediation project now is ended, so that sales tax money is not available to you now. I guess the question is, what do you see as the core functions of government And if you could cut something from the budget, what would it be? Let's get your answer to that, Sean.
Well, I don't like to see cuts anything happening with our budget because that's families that we're talking about. That's lives. That's households that are depending on a job and depending on a paycheck. So I don't want to see cuts happen. I'd like to see smarter use of our tax money and be sure that when we're allocating our tax money that we're not losing land that was at once taxed and then shifted on to the other property owners that are still in the community. We have only of the 3,000 square miles that we have here in the county, 83% of that is not in our control. It's not in the county control. 17% is in the county control through private ownership, and each one of us residents have a piece of that. Of that 17%, only 11% of that is even buildable because of terrain or water coverage. So when we're looking at how we're using our land, I think we can use that for our tax base and talk about adding to things instead of cutting things, because I don't want to affect families, I don't want to affect lives and paychecks. Being a small business owner, that's very important to me. So I would be mindful of the way that we use our tax dollars, and plus with the unfunded mandates that we're being told to spend now in our county just to keep things running from Olympia. That's where the pressure is going to be put on Olympia to say, hey, what's really fair and how much can we really afford? So if that dollar figure is in our mind that we all need to have in order to survive, we need to be careful about how we spend that. And I will be very responsible spending other people's money. I'm very careful spending mine. You can trust me with it.
Bob, same question.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I think this is something that we can anticipate coming and will be happening again and again and again. So we need to be proactive about this. I think that we really need to view ourselves as a regional economy and that we work together, the counties, with the cities, with the port, and with the PUD to really come up with approaches that really meet the needs of our county as a whole. And situations like the old station there, we can work together to address that. As far as having any kind of budget shortfall, what I would do, I would bring in the department heads and the sheriff and really look at our budget, where we can make cuts if necessary. I would certainly place a lot of emphasis on maintaining our reserve fund, which is currently about $9 million, to maintain that. We need that. But we can look at other options as far as how the department heads can work together to meet our common cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We'll now go to our 1-minute closing statements, and just as he sits down, we'll begin with Bob.
Give him my exercise here. Yeah, so thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. And Sean, I really have enjoyed getting to know you and to work with you and discuss issues
likewise
for the next 6 months. Yeah, so I have a lot of experience. I have really worked a lot. I've managed multi-million-dollar budgets, very similar to a county commission. I have worked with department heads that have got competing budgetary needs, just like we just discussed there, and helped to reconcile that. I've got tremendous leadership experience. I've been elected to be the head of many boards and committees at the statewide level and at the national level and here at the local level. I also have quite a bit of good partnership, good relationships with the cities, the mayors, the other counties, state legislators, the ports, the PUDs, and actually at the national level. I've gone back to DC and I've worked in Olympia quite a bit to advocate for funding for our communities and have been very successful at that. But the primary reason that I ask you for your vote is that I am a moderate, I am running as an independent, I have a strong and solid track record of bringing people together for our common good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Sean?
Thank you very much, Bob. Those are very nice words. Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to be running for county commissioner for the last year, and it is a long process. But it's something that's really important to me. It's really near and dear to my heart. I've got 4 children sitting out here in the audience that I'm very proud of. And this valley has given me opportunity all my life. I'm from Kashmir, and I've opened 2 businesses here in the valley and have had the opportunity to employ a lot of your children and a lot of your grandchildren, more than likely. We're coming in our 3rd generation of employees now with our 22 years here in the valley of running a small business. It's given me the perspective to look at more than just dollars and cents and look at people and look at employees that are desiring to get into the workforce and provide for themselves. And that's really what we all want to do as Americans. We want to provide for ourselves. And I've given a great opportunity right here in our hometown. And I would hope that at the end of 4 years, my first term is over, that all of you can truly look me in the eye and say, thank you very much. My life is better because of your decisions that you made with the County Commission. Trust me with that, and I assure you it will work. Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates for Chelan County Commission. We're going to take a short break again, and we'll be back after that with the candidates for State Legislature Position 2 at the 2018 Candidate Forum.
Tonight's television broadcast is brought to you by JDSA Law. Listen to their podcast, JDSA's Law Talk, as their attorneys clearly explain complicated legal issues and how the law applies to your everyday personal and professional life.
Lake Chelan Mailboxes is a small place with a lot to offer. Job one is shipping and receiving from A to Z. They pack it, they label it, they ship it. But did you know we also offer notary service, online computer access, legal forms, copies, greeting cards, and of course, mailboxes. Chelan Mailboxes, everything you need in one small package.
Stormy Mountain Brewing and local public house, featuring great family dining in downtown Chelan. We've got burgers, pub fare, and the best barbecue around. Try one of our award-winning sauces made fresh here in-house. So grab the whole gang and come on down. Stormy Mountain Brewing. Beer, barbecue, friends, and beer.
At Local Myth Pizza, we believe in real food, freshly prepared with only premium ingredients. Our cheeses are imported from Italy. Our sauces, dressings, and even our sausages are made in-house fresh daily. Featuring Northwest craft beers and 30 Chelan Valley wines and ciders. Family fun and amazing food. Eat local, drink local, and be local at Local Myth Pizza.
Come see why Sunset Magazine says you can't beat Local Myth Pizza.
Welcome back to the 2018 Candidate Forum. Next up, we have the candidates for the State Legislature Position 2, Mike Steele and Valerie Surratt. We'll begin the questioning with Dan.
All right. Valerie, we'll start with you. This is a question for both of you, and it relates to climate change, which we are already starting to feel the impacts here in north central Washington, from warmer winters and wetter springs to declining glaciers and snowpacks. What steps do you think both the 12th District and the state overall should take to decrease its carbon footprint?
Thank you for that question, Dan. This is something that is very dear to my heart. I think that we live in an age where we need to start addressing this immediately, and we should have decades ago, but we still have time to do that. I am impressed by the forwardness that Washington State has had with wind power and solar power, and I think in the 12th District we need to be really looking in terms of improving energy efficient appliances. We need to put more money into that. We also need to really focus on green jobs. And there's an initiative out there now that I think is very promising for a carbon fee. And basically what that would do is it would charge polluters who are putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, charge them for that ability to do that. And that has proven successful in California. They did that with not a fee necessarily, but a little different kind of program, and it did reduce their carbon emissions annually by 13%. So I feel it's an incredibly important thing to do and to be looking at. Thank you.
Mike, same question. What do you feel both the 12th District and the state overall should do to decrease its carbon footprint?
Thank you, Dan. Yes, so I think folks know that I serve on the Technology and Economic Development Committee in the State House, and that committee is the committee responsible for energy policy and innovations in technology. And I think one of the things that we see as we debate this policy in Olympia is we're going to make our way out of or reduce carbon emissions, if you will, through innovation in technology. And we've really worked hard at the state level to try and identify our biggest carbon emitters. Of course, as we all know, the thing that happens here in the 12th Legislative District on a regular basis is forest fires. Forest fires are the #1 largest emitter of carbon in Washington state. And so one of my priorities in government right now is working with DNR, working with the Forest Service, working with the governor's office on trying to better manage our forest lands. Because if we don't take care of our own properties first as the state, we're not setting a great example for the folks that we're trying to legislate for. And I think if we can bring down, those regular fire-emitting activities and actions, we have a lot better chance of moving toward a more carbon-neutral emission. Now, in the 12th Legislative District, we're very fortunate to live in the most hydro-dense place in the entire United States. So, of course, as you know, hydro emits 0 carbon. So how do we leverage that resource here and perhaps work to buy down loads in other jurisdictions and other PUDs and other utilities? How do we help balance those things? The state also already sets out a renewable portfolio standard, and we're trying to work with utilities across the state to identify that renewable portfolio standard. Is it working? Do we need to adjust that in order to be more carbon sensitive to the environment? So those are all things that we're doing already at the state level, and I'll continue to advocate for as we move into the next legislative session. Thanks.
Thank you. Steve Hare.
Okay, question let's talk about taxes for a minute. Would you support a state income tax as proposed by the State Superintendent of Public Instruction today, Chris Reichdahl, proposing a capital gains tax for education funding? What are your thoughts on that? Mike?
So I don't support a state income tax, but here's why. I think if we're going to look at dismantling our tax system in Washington state, we need to look in a holistic way. So one of the things that sets us apart from any other state in the union is business and occupation tax. That's the most regressive tax in all of the union. It's taxed on gross goods, and it's something that I think we really need to look carefully at if we're going to have the conversation about opening up our tax structure. You can't just piecemeal these solutions and expect that it's going to get better. So I think I'm absolutely willing to have the conversation around what does our tax structure look like here in Washington state? How do we perfect that tax structure? How do we ensure that no single individual or entity is harmed and it's equitable across the state and across the way we apply it? That's a really important piece when you're looking at tax structure. So I think it's often easy to go to the headline of the day and say, if we do this, it will solve this problem. But often as legislators, we see when we move the matrix around, it causes what we see as unintended consequences. And those unintended consequences are real, and that's something we have to evaluate as we look at it from a holistic point of view.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Same question.
Same question. Thank you. I agree with Mike. I think that there are always unintended consequences for taxes. In going around and talking with people, I found that actually a lot of people do want to pay their fair share of taxes. A lot of people don't understand where that money goes, and I think that's an education issue that needs to be addressed more for people to understand where their money is going. I do support an income tax, but I understand that for the last 10 years, the voters have rejected it. So, one has to go with the will of the people. I think that, as it's been said many times, Washington State has a very regressive tax policy. So the wealthy in our country are getting tax breaks. We have, I believe it's 940 tax breaks in total. Of course, that doesn't all go to the wealthy, but there are a lot of breaks that they get. And I think that we need to start looking at more progressive tax structures. And I'm not a tax expert. I'm the first to tell you, I'm just a teacher. But I believe that we need to do more to have accountability for those companies, those corporations, and those people who are taking so much from our state and not giving their fair share to the public, to the people like us. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, you had another question?
Sure. So this relates to funding, but we'll take the bend of education on this one. And it seems that we're still going to be talking about this heading into the next legislative session, even though the Supreme Court has said that the legislature has met the thresholds that were in the McCleary decision. But what tweaks, if any, do you think are necessary when it comes to how school districts can collect and spend local levy dollars? Start with Valerie.
Yeah, well, I've seen this firsthand because I'm still teaching right now. I think it was a wonderful thing for the people in the legislature to pass the budget and to pass a supplementary budget to actually give full funding to education. I saw the problems that were happening throughout the state and actually even in our school district where the money was given but there wasn't an idea of how are we going to pay for these higher salaries for teachers in the future. So that is something that definitely needs to be addressed and needs to be looked at. I don't want to see school districts being bankrupt in the future because they have these obligations that were set by the legislature, but then they're not quite sure how to carry on with. But I'm really excited about fully funding education. I think we need to look at the programs that are working and continue those. I think we need to look at the programs that may not work. But one thing I have as a teacher is that oftentimes we will get people coming in looking at programs that have been up and running for a year or 2 years. And oftentimes that's not enough time for teachers, for students, for the whole school community to be able to really get good at a certain approach or a certain strategy. So I feel I could go on about this, but there are a lot of things, a lot of tweaks that we will do and we need to do as far as using the money wisely for education. Thank you.
Mike, same question related to how school districts can collect and spend local levy dollars.
Thanks, Dan. As a member of the K-12 Education Committee in the House, you can imagine we talk about this ad nauseum. And as we were working through the McCleary decision and what we thought a solution might look like, we really did go back and forth on how the state's role is affecting local levies and what that might look like as an equity standpoint across the state of Washington. I've been appointed by the Speaker of the House, along with 7 other legislators, to address not only this issue, but state-funded construction, because the capital budget on which I serve also matches school construction at the local bond level. And so we're trying to the 8 of us, it's a bipartisan task force, are trying to understand what different districts face and what different districts are trying to pay for with both their levy dollars and their bond dollars, and how those interact and how those intersect, and what the communities really want. You know, one of the things that we did was put an additional $8 billion through this McCleary decision into education, and over 50% of our general fund budget goes to education. So my hope is that we start addressing student concerns. Student success should be at the forefront of what we do in our policy work in K-12. How are students successful? And you can't talk about McCleary without talking about the structure we've created inside education here in Washington State. We've been using a factory model of education for the last 50 years, and I don't think it works, frankly. I'm ready to start dismantling that system little by little so that we can see what's working and see what students are gravitating towards and seeing what students are finding success in. Because as a legislator, that's what I really believe our responsibility is. It's not just about supporting teachers and supporting their classrooms, but it's also making sure the students are leaving our school districts with degrees or skills or a set of skills that they can apply in their lives that are going to make them successful. And ultimately, that should be the focus. So that's what I'm going to continue to work on when I go back to the legislature.
Thank you. We'll now go to the 1-minute closing statements, and we'll begin with Valerie.
Thank you. Everyone who came out tonight is obviously very interested and engaged in the issues and the policies of local, state, and federal government, and I applaud you for that. Thank you. Now, however, all of us need to go out and start to talk with those people who are not engaged, who are not interested in what's going on in our government. We need to invite them into our discussions and have them join us and understand what is happening. Those discussions don't need to be just the talking points or the rhetoric of the day. We need to actually start asking questions, and many, many questions that confront the status quo of what we think works and what we think doesn't work, and see if that's actually true. We require creativity and also curiosity and perseverance in order to do this. I think the topics that we need to deal with are climate change, the huge discrepancy of power between the rich and the poor, and also corporate takeover of our resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I really appreciate it when folks take the opportunity to educate themselves on who we are as candidates. It's been an honor to serve as your state representative over the last term, and I look forward to hopefully continuing that in the state legislature. There's a lot of work left to be done. As I said, my focus continues to be on economic development, job growth. I really have a heart for changing our education system, moving more programs toward career and technical education, looking for ways that we can create competency-based education opportunities for our students. I've been very successful as a member of the capital budget, bringing money home for projects throughout the legislative district. This is obviously a huge district and the needs vary significantly, but I've been honored to work with communities to meet the needs where they are. And as someone who was born and raised here, my family's been here 115 years, I only go to the legislature because I care about this place. Trust me, I have a full-time job where all of us are out campaigning, and we're here tonight as candidates. We do those things because we're passionate about the people we serve. I want to go back to continue serving you in the legislature. It would be an honor, so I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates for state legislature. We'll be taking a short break again and be back with the final race of the evening. That's the state legislature, position 1, at the 2018 Candidate Forum.
Tonight's television broadcast is brought to you by JDSA Law. Since 1946, they've been dedicated to providing the highest quality legal support to individuals, businesses, and organizations.
Stormy Mountain Brewing and local public house, featuring great family dining in downtown Chelan. We've got burgers, pub fare, and the best barbecue around. Try one of our award-winning sauces made fresh here in-house. So grab the whole gang and come on down. Stormy Mountain Brewing. Beer, barbecue, friends, and beer.
At Local Myth Pizza, we believe in real food, freshly prepared with only premium ingredients. Our cheeses are imported from Italy. Our sauces, dressings, and even our sausages are made in-house fresh daily. Featuring Northwest craft beers and 30 Chelan Valley wines and ciders. Family fun and amazing food. Eat local, drink local, and be local at Local Myth Pizza.
Come see why Sunset Magazine says you can't beat Local Myth Pizza.
Lake Chelan Mailboxes is a small place with a lot to offer. Job one is shipping and receiving from A to Z. They pack it, they label it, they ship it. But did you know we also offer notary service, online computer access, legal forms, copies, greeting cards, and of course, mailboxes. Chelan Mailboxes, everything you need in one small package.
Welcome back to the 2018 Candidate Forum. Our last race of the evening is for the state legislature, position 1, between Keith Gaynor and Ann Diamond. First up for questions will be Steve Hare.
Thank you very much. There was a fair amount of controversy in the last session over a bill that proposed to remove the legislative branch from the state's voter-approved Public Records Act. What are your thoughts on that? Keith?
Well, that's an interesting question for someone at the county who is dealing with that all the time. Quite honestly, I didn't understand, and we haven't understood, why the legislature has exempted themselves from laws that they've put into place. The public records request has been put in place to require transparency within government. The county, in my experience for the last 16 years, we have been subject to that. We would expect that every public official would also be driven by the same guidelines that we are too, whether it be some of the smallest cities we know have come into, I'm thinking of a Mesa, where it basically almost bankrupted the city because of a public records request. So the smallest taxing district, the junior taxing districts are subject to it. The cities, the counties, all jurisdictions are subject to it. And I would think that if the legislature sees that it's good for public disclosure to be transparent and be out there for the public to see what kinds of activities are taking place, that it also would be good for the legislature to be governed by that law also.
Ann, would you see anything as off limits for a public records request?
No, I think every legislator should have the same requirements, and I agree with Keith. I'm on a planning commission, and when you meet, you have to have the public available and asking questions, and your records are open. You cannot meet in secret unless you have an executive session, and if you do that, you have to publish it beforehand. Why the legislators felt they could exempt themselves, I am unclear. And on top of that, when they did it, it was introduced and passed through the House in 24 hours, through the Senate, and on the governor's desk within 48 hours. What makes it through the legislature that fast? So clearly it was fast-tracked through, and then it was also a supermajority, which means it could have survived the governor's veto. But thanks to our news media and public comment, there were over 20,000 emails to our governor to say no and veto this bill. Unfortunately, even though the governor did veto it, he did so with the idea that there would be a commission to relook at this. And as of this date, the legislature still has not moved forward with making itself have the same responsibility to the public and have open records. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, you have a question?
We'll start with Ann on this one, and this is a question about political affiliation. You are running as an independent, and I'm curious what that means to you, and also how you would work with both Democrats and Republicans in Olympia should you be elected.
So I'm running as an independent, and I've been knocking on doors really since June. And initially, people met me with a little bit of suspicion. Well, what does that mean? Do you lean this way? Do you lean that way? And what it means to me is that I am not responsible to a party. I am responsible to the voters who elected me. And when I first started talking about this, people, maybe a third of them would tell me that they're independent too. They don't pay attention to party. They vote for the person who they think would be the best candidate. But after the last 2 weeks, I have to tell you, I was doorbelling in Leavenworth right after the first day of the Kavanaugh hearings. I didn't have to explain to anybody why I was running independent. And you're laughing, but I'm serious. People were embarrassed by our government, and they felt that the parties were just posturing with each other, and that our government suffered because of it. Now, you asked what I'll do when I make it to Olympia. Well, it's never been done before, so I can only guess how this is going to work. I have no intention of meeting in caucus with either party. They're closed caucuses. If they were both open, then I could enjoy going to both of them, and other states do that. They do have open caucuses between the party. Nonetheless, when you have a closely held House, it is possible for me to be able to be a vote between 48 Republicans and 50 Democrats, and my vote still counts as one. I don't have to be part of a caucus. Thank you.
And Keith, a similar question about political affiliation. As a Republican, how would you represent all residents of the 12th District and work across the aisle in Olympia, should you be elected?
Well, fortunately, I've had the opportunity to do that. As a county commissioner, I've reached across the different spectrums of political thought to come up with solutions that work best for the people that I represent. In this case, it's been a county, and what I'm looking forward to doing is representing a district that does have differing viewpoints. The importance of parties in Olympia is that when you caucus, that's how the committee assignments are put together, the staff is assigned. It gives you the opportunity to actually have influence in the legislative discussion in those specific committees. So what I would do to make sure that I'm representing everyone would be to be talking with any and everyone that I could to get as many perspectives as possible. Obviously, the decision comes back to me as an individual, as a representative. That's the way our democratic system works. We are elected to represent our constituents. My constituents, when I'm elected, are neither Republican or Democrat. They are constituents in the 12th District. It stretches from Grand Coulee to the Met House to Wenatchee to Rock Island to Crescent Bar area. I mean, it's important that people realize that when you elect someone, you have the right to expect them to represent your view. It may not be that you will always agree with where the vote comes down when someone represents you, but they have the right, the citizen has the right to make sure that their representative hears their voice. And I, for one, have really valued a differing voice as a commissioner because it's allowed me to see a different perspective. To think that I have all the answers and I can come up with all the solutions is really not very wise on my part. But it's more important for me to put together, a good solution set made up of the differing viewpoints and then make a decision that represents this district.
Steve, you have the last question of the evening, so let's make it good.
Thanks for that. Growth Management Act, in the 2 decades since it was passed by the legislature, has it been effective in controlling growth, or has it hamstrung local government and its ability to control its own land use decisions? Ann?
So the Growth Management Act was started in the 1990s, and at the time, no one could have anticipated the growth in Eastern Washington. The purpose of the Growth Management Act was to control and keep cities densely populated, not have sprawl, and allow for open space and agricultural lands in Eastern Washington. However, right now we have no housing. It doesn't matter where you are in this district. In the Methow, in Leavenworth, in Chelan, in Wenatchee, there is no housing. And part of that is a zoning problem. Yes, there are 1,200 people coming into King County every month, but that has a ripple effect. And again, when I'm knocking on doors, I'm in Kashmir knocking on doors and I'm asking somebody how long they've lived in their house, and the woman replies, "Oh, we just moved from Leavenworth. We couldn't afford and couldn't find anything there, so we're now in Kashmir." Rock Island, 150 houses going in Rock Island. And when you knock on doors there, people tell you they've just moved from Wenatchee. It is a ripple effect, and it was never part of the Growth Management Act to prevent and put a lid on Eastern Washington. Now, local governments do have the ability at the county level to have a comp plan, and they can take different ideas to a commission and look at whether the Growth Management Act can be there can be a variance. But that's difficult to do, and we're going to need to, as a local region, determine our own fate, and that means having a strong unified voice from our District 12 representatives so that we can develop economically here and have housing for our citizenry. Thank you.
The Growth Management Act, if you talk to the legislators who were in session at the time, was never intended to pass. And yet what happened was it did pass. Somebody called somebody else's bluff and it came into play, and we ended up with a Management Act that tried to make one size fit all in the state of Washington. It hasn't worked very well. It hasn't achieved its intended goal of controlling the growth. And one of the reasons is because government got involved where they should have allowed local jurisdictions to dictate planning processes. In the case of Chelan County and the counties around us, they all had comprehensive plans. They all had planning in place because they did care about their future. But when the state said, oh, those plans need to conform to the way we think you ought to plan, it became a nightmare. And I've been living with it at the county level. We have, as a commission, we have gone before the Growth Hearings Board trying to push the envelope to be a little more creative. We have been able to do some things like cluster developments that allows for a higher density but still has dedicated open space. So, you know, the intent of the act that we have to comply with is still being complied with, but we've been creative. We've been trying to think outside the box. The cities, you know, one of the issues that we have for them is really to have a different mindset as to what kind of housing units they're willing to support. You know, we don't, in Eastern Washington, we don't have a lot of multifamily apartment buildings like you might in Seattle. You know, it may be that in some places, in order to have more affordable housing units, we've got to look at things like that, higher densities in the cities, higher height restrictions, because right now you are restricted in most cities how high you can build. And we know that supply and demand really dictates the price of housing. So it's really important that the Growth Management Act is reformed, and that really is something that you need a strong legislative caucus to move forward to create that pressure to have that change occur.
Thank you, Keith. And now we'll do our 1-minute closing statements, and we'll begin with you, Keith.
Well, I do appreciate everyone coming tonight and everyone that's tuning in, whether it be by radio or television. It is important in that representative process for people to be informed. It's easy on the campaign trail to come up with a lot of, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do this, and government ought to do that. But the reality is that government has become very complex. And some of the things that seem to make good common sense are really difficult to implement because there are so many other restrictions. And so as a legislator, you really have to be careful as to what kind of legislation you are willing to support because of unintended consequences. For me, I have a history of public service. I'd like to think that that would give you an idea of where my values are, my ideals for the 12th district. It's important to me that we maintain the quality of life that we enjoy and what really attracts people. The reason people are coming over the hill to our district is because we have a very enjoyable place to live and to work and to play. And it's really important that we maintain that. But in order to do that, we have to maintain some due diligence, and we have to be willing to stand firm for the things that have made this district great, and to ensure that our future is here for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann?
Well, I also want to thank you for your expertise in putting this together, and for all of you for your endurance and staying to the very end. We in Eastern Washington, we like to do things a little differently. And for those of us who live in the county, that means that oftentimes when we see something that's not working, we have to take it upon ourselves to fix it. We can't wait for the plow. We can't wait for others to make things happen because we're out in the county. As a physician, a family doc, when I first arrived in Okanogan County, I used to commute down to Brewster to work. And I realized that I was commuting to another community, but my own community needed health care, more health care. And so I started my clinic with much help from friends and family. But we built on a lot. And that went from being a very small business with 8 people and 2 employees to what would be a fairly large business of 20 people and over 10,000 charts. The point being is that we can do things if we have vision. And as a family physician, what I am doing when I listen to my patients is try to figure out the best plan for them. And I believe as a legislator and as an independent legislator, one who will meet with anyone, just like any patient. I don't ask if they're Republican or Democrat. I just try to work in their best interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the Numerica Performing Arts Center, the sponsors of this forum, the panelists who showed up, the candidates who were gracious enough with their time, and to you, the audience here in the facility, and to those watching on television and listening on radio, thank you very much. This has been the 2018 Candidate Forum.
Thanks for watching tonight's Candidates Forum on the NCWLIFE channel. Tonight's forum was a collaboration of the NCWLIFE channel, KOHO Radio, and the Wenatchee World. For the rebroadcast schedule of tonight's forum or to watch the forum on demand, please go to our website, ncwlife.com.